Steve Martin felt the weight of several lifetimes bearing down as he aimlessly paced the dimly lit confines of his fortress-like home editing suite. Despite the room's luxurious accoutrements and state-of-the-art technological trappings lining every wall, an undercurrent of fatalistic unease permeated the atmosphere like a suffocating miasma. With each lap traversed, the iconic comedian's gaze kept returning to the innocuous external hard drive resting on the central console amid a clutter of discarded notes and production ephemera. He knew full well the thermonuclear implications contained within that unassuming little titanium shell, yet couldn't quite put a finer point on the source of his spiraling trepidation. Was it guilt over exploiting such inflammatory insider footage beyond its original sanctioned purpose? The justifiable liability of violating privacy on such an unprecedented global scale? Or simply the existential recognition that there remained no credible avenues for stifling this Pandora's box once the damning revelations spilled across the public consciousness? Pausing in mid-stride, Martin scooped up the hard drive and numbly rotated it in his calloused palm, absently marveling at how such a minuscule artifact bore the potential to reduce the world's most revered and sacrosanct institutions into rubble. After another steadying exhalation, he resignedly popped the device into a waiting array of networked drives before navigating to the leaked source files directory. Immediately, the monitor array blinked into illumination, each individual panel blazing to life with raw unedited footage from the most solemn and pivotal spectacle to transfix the globe over this past year. Every angle of the historical broadcast captured in vivid 4K fidelity, completely devoid of any aesthetic revision or commentating artifice. There it all remained, the scenes of pomp and pageantry venerating Queen Elizabeth II's unwavering 7-decade reign over the British monarchy amid its repertoire of traditional Catholic rites and formalities. Sweeping aerial vistas of London streets thronged with mourners solemnly lining the ceremonial cortege proceedings alongside international dignitaries and heads of state jockeying for prime viewing sections. But Steve Martin's interest centered squarely upon the intimate flycam angles meticulously recording every second inside the sanctuary's hushed chambers. Specifically, the lenses documenting every nuanced expression and interaction among the royal family's grieving inner circle of progeny, filing in as physical embodiments of dynastic legacy. With a few deft keystrokes, he queued up the most germane sequences centered upon the former Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle. The raven-cropped figures of herself and Prince Harry occupied one of the regal pews, their body language radiating rigid isolation even for the ceremonial grandeur surrounding them. In fact, the only evident signs of any connection stemmed from Meghan's stilted interactions with the newest generation of miniature royals tasked with ceremonially upholding tradition. But even during these relatively benign moments, something darker wormed its way across the Duchess' scowling features whenever the cameras lingered. Martin could practically envision the unspoken resentments roiling behind those glowering sidelong glares trained upon the youthful Princess Charlotte as the adolescent strove to remain composed and respectful beside her mother Kate. Every delicate affectation of noblesse oblige and regal posture seemed to radiate exasperation, prickling Meghan's sneer. As he scrutinized the footage more intently, Steve realized precisely what had him so transfixed and uneasy at first glance. The almost imperceptible tension radiating from the former Suits actress as though actively seething at Charlotte's every motion and utterance. Some bloated sense of resentful insecurity and contempt aimed directly at the younger princess for embodying everything Meghan's bitter jealousy over being forever ostracized from royal favor had robbed her of. As though the very presence of a fresh youthful interloper fluently radiating the graces of court elegance and familial proclivity sickened her resolve to rationalize away failings. Almost involuntarily, Martin's focus magnified upon one particular lapel cam angle capturing the most startling raw moment, a sequence lasting mere seconds but utterly chilling in its unveiled menace. During an interregnum for recomposing the family's choreographed posturing, Charlotte had instinctively initiated a familiar ritual from childhood, leaning her head against Mother Catherine's waist for solace. A tender gesture instantly recognized by any parent and child forged from love's unbreakable bonds. What unfolded next during that brief suspended heartbeat set the industry veteran's pulse pounding in dread premonition. Seemingly triggered by the innocuous display of daughterly affection, Meghan's entire frame visibly stiffened with undisguised outrage. Her russet eyes narrowed to hateful slits behind splayed nostrils flaring with barely checked vitriol. In the ensuing second, the Duchess ostentatiously turned up the side eye while wearing an undisguised sneer of such unbridled contempt, Steve Martin felt the acidic sting of revulsion scorch his throat. Worse, the unmistakable cadence of her lips silently mouthing some unspoken epithet of withering cruelty appeared aimed directly at the blissfully unawares Princess Charlotte that very instant. The former actress' spiteful features contorted hideously around whatever unvoiced rebuke that twisted guttural impulse unleashed. But just as quickly as the footage captured that unambiguous glimpse into the devouring black malevolence dredging Meghan's soul, the moment dissipated back into overt platitudes. Blinking forcibly, she pivoted to refocus on the broadcast cameras while smoothing her rancorous snarl back into the long-practiced facade of radiant sympathy and reserve. Almost immediately, any trace of the grotesque spat evaporated from the official transmission replayed worldwide. Those split seconds of grotesque contempt destined to remain forever sequestered from public consciousness in the ensuing reels of carefully scrubbed and bowdlerized coverage. Martin paused the clip while staring transfixed at the grainy enlargement of Meghan's poisoned expression, his brow glistening in repulsed horror. Despite every sensibility resisting the urge to spool backwards and force himself to relive unraveling that glimpse into cataclysmic darkness repeatedly, something indefinable yet compelled him forward down that dread spiral. On whatever provisional molecular plane the psyche resorts to for insulating itself from truths too perverse to fathom, a pinprick of doubt still flickered that he'd merely witnessed some momentary lapse of poor reaction distorted through the lens. That even the most bitter of human hearts couldn't possibly perpetrate ill intentions or hatred so viscerally demonic upon an innocent child, let alone their own blood connections. Yet with each plumbing of the pit gaping before him, those aspirational reassurances carried less and less traction against the blinding clarion call of this soul-scorching reality's grim inertia. For all his storied years, Steve sensibly processed humanity's vast wellspring of triumphs and follies. Something primal still refused to fully comprehend, having borne witness to inexcusable malice metastasized to such depraved and corrupted depths. Shuddering the playback, the renowned comedian bowed his head against the emotional vertigo swamping his conscience. What earthly choice remained but to inflict this unvarnished glimpse into the worst possible depravities upon public consciousness itself? To excise this moral tumor before its toxicity fully breached society's remaining philosophical guardrails through his sworn oath to truth's preservation, no matter how stomach-churning or divisive the costs. After all, wasn't that ironclad obligation to unblinking factual fearlessness precisely why this cache of footage found its way into Steve Martin's discreet hands from those sworn to uphold the royal family's sanctity at all costs? To play unwitting prophet, unveiling the unvarnished reality of these indelible lacerations before they metastasized irreparably? So many fateful implications to still disentangle, but ultimately little in the way of credible rationale left to outweigh the moral gravity drawing him forward into uncertainty's gaping maw. With a troubled sigh, Martin extracted his personal encryption key and prepared the digital dossier for mass dissemination. "Easy, my old friend," he muttered hollowly while keying the final commands. No sense dwelling on the casualties to prepare for inevitably, for even a single